Alright, welcome back guys to yet another video. Today we are looking at lesson 5 of the 6 ways to make people like you. I cannot believe we are already on lesson 5. These 6 weeks are going by so fast, and to think that next week we are already done with these, my favorite lessons in this whole book. It's sad, but we gotta continue because there's great stuff coming in the next couple chapters and sections. As always, if you want to read up about that before we do the videos on them, you can always find them on my website, www.justonemoreday.info. But enough about that. I'll talk more about that at the end of the video. Let's jump into what we came here for, lesson 5. And the lesson here is to talk about the other person's interest if you want to get to know them better, if you want to get something out of them. And we're going to learn about that right here with a good story that Dale Carnegie shares in this chapter. But before we get to that story, he also talks about Theodore Roosevelt. And anyone who ever met Roosevelt knew that he was always someone who knew what to say. No one really knew how he did it, but the answer is simple. It was the night before that he was expecting a visitor of some sort. He would look them up, do a couple research things about maybe stuff that they liked, and he would research that so he would know a little bit about their subjects. That way he could always kind of keep the conversation going or start a conversation too. And a lot of leaders like Roosevelt know this, that if you want to get to someone's heart, if you really want to get to know them and make friends with them, you really have to talk about things that he or she really treasures the most. And now we're going to get into the story about Edward L. Chalif. And this was someone who wanted to get something out of a higher up, and he didn't think he could do it. And I'm sure if he took any other approach than this, he probably wouldn't have got the great rewards that he was seeking, and he actually got more than what he asked for. And Mr. Chalif needed a favor. He was head of the Boy Scouts, and he was planning this big trip to take the boys to Europe, but he needed some of the funding to be paid for, so he was going to try to get the president of one of the largest corporations in America to pay for the expenses of one of the boys for the trip. And so just like Roosevelt did, Mr. Chalif wanted to research this man a little bit more and see if he could find anything, maybe interest, hobbies, stuff that he likes, that he could kind of keep the conversation going and maybe try to be his friend a little bit before he just plainly asked about money and the stuff that he wanted out of that business deal. And when he was searching up this man, he realized that this person, this president of this huge company, had a check drawn for $1 million, and that he actually had it framed after it was canceled. So on the day of the meeting, Mr. Chalif, when he went into the office, of course he did not start by immediately asking for the Boy Scouts to be funded or the trip to Europe. He asked about the check, and he actually started to really act interested in it, and I'm sure he actually was interested in it because back in those days a check for $1 million was huge. It still is huge today. But he asked to see the check, and he wanted to kind of know the story behind the check. And so when the president showed him the check, Mr. Chalif said that he was so excited to tell the boys of the Boy Scouts that he was actually someone who could say that they witnessed a check drawn for $1 million with his own eyes. Dale Carnegie put the emphasis on this. He said, "Notice, like I said, how Mr. Chalif did not start talking about the things that interested him, like the trip to Europe or the Boy Scouts. He talked about things that really interested the president and the other guy, really. And of course the results were way better than Mr. Chalif could have ever expected." And after telling the story about the check and talking a little bit, the president again asked what Mr. Chalif was here for and what he came to see him for. And so Mr. Chalif told him that he was looking to try to get him to fund one of the boys' trips to Europe so that they could go. And he not only agreed right away to send one boy to Europe, he agreed to send 5 boys and Mr. Chalif himself to Europe. And not only that, he also gave them $1,000 check and told them to stay in Europe for 7 weeks. And also this president made special arrangements to meet Mr. Chalif and the Boy Scouts in Paris and personally show them the town as well. So he actually wanted to make a trip over there and actually meet with them and kind of give them a little tour. So that's really cool. And so Mr. Chalif learned a very important lesson that day. He learned that if he began with his wants, if he stormed into that office and asked right away for money to show that he was more interested in himself, in the trip, and the boys than the president himself, I'm sure he would not have gotten anywhere near that. And talking in terms of the other person's interest, it pays off for both parties. As Howard Z. Herzig, a leader in the field of employee communication, says, "Not only do I receive a different reward from each person, but that reward has been an enlargement of my life." So let us remember to always talk in the terms of the other person's interest. You will find yourself succeeding where others have failed time and time again. So thank you guys so much for watching Lesson 5. As always, like I say every video, I love these little lessons. They're short, they're to the point, they have a story to them, and it's something that I can really do in my life, and I hope that you guys can do in your life as well, to change and get stuff that you want and really build friendships. So thank you guys, and next week we are on Lesson 6, so I hope that you have enjoyed these, and I hope that you come back next week for the final lesson. But there's always more coming because we have so many more little lessons and topics that Dale Carnegie talks about in this great book. And if you want to read about this or read anything else, you can find it all on my website, like I said at the beginning of the video, www.justonemoreday.info. Links will be in the description. Links should start popping up anytime on this video. It depends on when I choose to stop talking. Thank you guys again. Your time, as always, means the world to me, so I don't want to waste any more than I need to. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next week.